Today's episode is brought to you by In My Bag Apparel and Customs. In My Bag is a brand that collaborates with talented artists from across the country to bring some unique and exclusive concepts to life at a reasonable price. For $15 off your first purchase, visit whatnot.com/invite/in_my_bag 2023. That's whatnot.com/invite/in_my_bag 2023 for $15 off your first purchase. And make sure to check them out on Instagram as well at @in_my_bag 2023. Did you know the heart of a blue whale is the largest heart of any living creature, weighing as much as 1,300 pounds, which makes it very easy for a human to swim through its arteries? That sounds disgusting. I would never want to do that, but that's crazy talk. 1,300 pounds for a heart?
Yeah, that's insane. That's completely insane.
Stupid. That thing weighs damn near as much as my car. Let's get out of here.
Right.
What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Playbook Podcast. I'm Prescott Kelly. With me today is Darion Hopkins, host of Sports Talk with Darion Hopkins. What's going on with you, my man? Glad to have you back on, not back on, but on for the first time. Good to see you here, bud.
It's finally, awesome to actually be here. So just shout out to everybody that's going to be watching. Shout out to everybody on on my channel with Sports Talk with Darion Hopkins. Make sure y'all go over to the Playbook Podcast. If y'all see that Playbook Podcast with Prescott Kelly, make sure y'all go and subscribe to his channel. I think that's the channel, right? The Playbook Podcast.
Playbook Podcast, yeah. It's very minimal on YouTube and good everywhere else.
Yeah, and everywhere else. Make sure y'all go over there and subscribe. I'm gonna put the link in the chat, so make sure y'all go over there and support, everything on social media, Sports Talk with Darion. So thank you for having me. I appreciate you, reaching out and talking some football.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like it's been one of the things where I know we talk a bit off air, we get in these modes, but I've seen what you've done. I've seen the way that you put your show together, and I really like what you've done, the layout. We kind of talked like the way that you present things. Everybody just kind of clamors back for like the old school Sports Center reel, right? Like we want to go back to Stuart Scott. We want to go back to Rich Eisen. And the way that you get, it gets a really clean, really cool, almost kind of retro feel, but still is very much contemporary in its design.
Right.
And like some of them are short clips, some of them are 7-10 minutes, but that's all we got now in this day and age. We don't have an hour listening to my old ass listen to like talking about sports. We got 10 minutes. Get to the point and let's get with what's good. And you you seem to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like if they want you to go straight to the point. They want to get you straight to the point. So they like, yo, just get to it. Like, what do we talk about here? Like, don't beat around the bush. So that's exactly what what the audience wants to see first. They want to see what's being talked about. So we here to talk about it all today, though. We're going to dive into a lot today.
We're going to dive into it. So yeah, as somebody who now obviously the Ohio State Buckeyes defeated, and I don't want to say they were my Irish. I'm Irish. So I inherited, kind of my love for Notre Dame came strictly because if your name is James Prescott Kelly and you're not Irish and you're not an Irish fan, you're going to get disowned one way or another, right?
Right.
So yeah, I leaned into the Irish stuff. It wasn't because of Joe Montana or anybody else like that. It was just I was Irish, so I liked the Irish for a bit. I was born in Texas, so I liked the Longhorns for a bit.
Right.
But there's some people really taking this thing real seriously, and it's mostly Michigan fans. With the when was the last time you beat us? So I want to get your synopsis of the game in its entirety, because again, as somebody I'm not fully invested in that space. So I want to get your analysis of the game, but also are Michigan fans being salty, or do they have a reason to still kind of just pound that, when was the last time y'all beat us kind of drum, because it is loud today.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to Michigan and Ohio State, that's like one of the biggest rivalries in college football, just in football itself, just because of the people that went there, came into the NFL, now Hall of Famers. So it's just so much animosity because, they're not that far from each other on top of that. So to me, I'm going to say Michigan fans are salty. And I'm going to say why. Because, yeah, you won undefeated. You won the national title last year. I completely understand that. You had a 4-game playoff last year compared to a 12-game playoff. Ohio State had a harder road than y'all had. They had to go in Pasadena and beat Oregon. They beat my Tennessee Vols, and then they had to go beat Texas, which is 3 good teams in college football. So for Michigan to say, "Oh, yeah, Michigan is salty at the end of the day," I'm sorry to say, I'm not going to beat around the bush with it. They're salty because they won a national championship. Ohio State won a national championship. One. Number two, they're salty because we beat them at the end of the year, and now they won the national championship. Yeah, you're salty because you beat them at the end of the year, and then you your stamp on the shoe in Ohio State, and then now when they won a national championship, you butthurt. You're absolutely butthurt. So I didn't want Ohio State to win. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a Tennessee Vols fan. I wanted my Vols to win, but it didn't happen that way. Can't be mad at you, Michigan fans. Y'all just salty at the end. Y'all just mad. You mad, bro? That's just how I see it. So when
I
it
do have to
comes to
correct
this
myself
game
because
itself,
I have to correct myself because I said the other way around, but it's because Michigan did beat them this year, but it's always been like, when was the last time that y'all beat us? And it's weird because when we get in these realms of, again, with me not being somebody who's necessarily a big college football fan, I understand like what the construct of still is, if you can't be here, we're okay with spoiling yours. And like, but that didn't happen this year though. They
right,
thought, hey, we thought
so
we gonna mess up your plans and your party. Nope.
right. So Michigan fans, get back to the national championship, get back to the playoff, and then you can see if you can beat Ohio State again. Until then, there's nothing else to talk about.
I mean, it's real hard to argue with that.
It's just that simple for Michigan. Just get back in the college football playoff. It's 12 teams now. If you could be one of those 12 teams, then you could compete with Ohio State and while they defend their title. Because most likely they probably going to get back in automatically next year to defend that title. So you got technically 11 spots for you to get in there and beat Ohio State.
Well, see, and I think that might be
join them.
I think that might be one of the biggest reasons why they feel that way is because when you're the national champ, you feel like you're just entitled to that spot, especially when they expanded to 12. They probably thought, hey, we just won it last year. We should be in regardless of what your record is, there's a little bit of a sense of entitlement where either because we got there last year. But, and Anthony McBride's in here, and I wouldn't say he's a good friend of mine because I've never met him before, but he's a Pats fan. I'm a Bills fan. We've had our back and forth, but he's an overall really good dude. He goes, I'm a Michigan fan, and what makes me mad is the fact that they're saying that the game is meaningless. I'm not saying regular season is regular season, dog. Like I think that's kind of, it's not that it's not because the rivalry matters. To me, like I've never been to, I'm a 3-time college dropout. They're all community colleges in Alaska. I don't care about any of these schools, bro. Like, I don't have that kind of affiliation at all. So if you went to a school or if you have that affinity for it, I get it. I personally just never had that attachment, most specifically to a college program. So I mean, if you want to battle between yourselves, more power to you. But it's not a space that I occupy, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to take too long on the college football playoff, and I can say from the 12 team playoff, I really liked that. The funny part about it is that you see all the teams that had a bye week that had the number one seed or probably had number 2 seed, or number 3 or number 4. None of them made it past the semifinal. Nobody made it to that top 4. So seeing Notre Dame and seeing Ohio State as a 7 and 8 seed in this 12 playoff, it tells you what type of teams that they are. Even with 14 plus wins for both teams. Do you have one of the best receivers in the nation in Jeremiah Smith, which I think is going to be a top 5 pick if he keeps that going as a freshman. So NFL teams definitely take a look at him. Will Howard, probably a South Jersey / Philadelphia native that I seen play over at St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia. Guy is good. The guy is good. I mean, the guy went in the first half, he was 12 for 12. And it was like 8 for 8 on third down. So you're not going to win football. You think you're going to win as Notre Dame? You really think you're going to win football games with type of performances like that? Even though Notre Dame did come back in that second half and try to make it a game, but you was down too much. You was down 31-7 at the half. You were really playing catch up now. So at the end of the day, congratulations to Ohio State. Even though that Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love and all those guys over there at Notre Dame, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You only had one loss on the year against Northern Illinois, and you took your second loss in the biggest game in the national championship. You have nothing to be mad about. You have nothing to be sad about. Y'all came back, y'all competed, but y'all just ran out of time. It's simple. It's simple as that. Marcus Freeman is a hell of a coach. Ryan Day finally got over the hump because he was always talking about how big of a coach that can't win the big game. He was always talked about in that way. So I really loved it was enjoyable watching the national championship. I was going to turn off at halftime, but like, oh yeah, it's 31-7. This game is over. But Notre Dame came back and did what they needed to do to try to, come back and win the national championship. Probably would have been the biggest comeback in college football history. But they have nothing. Notre Dame has nothing to be ashamed of at all. Nobody expected Notre Dame to even have just one loss on the year, even though they're not in a conference, which has always been like that. But
yeah, that's
it is what
new.
it is. So that's
not a new thing. Like they've been independent for I don't know exactly how long, but I'm 40 and I'm sure since that long.
Anthony O'Brien said the seeding needs to be addressed. No way buys should have went to a few of those teams. Like who?
So
like I mean, the only one I could probably say that didn't supposed to get that buy, and I'm gonna be honest with you, is Boise State. Arizona State deserved it. Who else was that? Who else was in those seedings at the time? I don't remember right off back, but I know Boise State and Arizona State was the two of the four. But I think Arizona State deserved it the way they played against Texas in that semifinal. Oh, okay, Boise State, I can agree with that.
So I know that you and I, well, not you and I, but you said like I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, and I get it. But I do want to ask you one thing though, is before we move on to professional ball, is 12-team playoff. There's a lot of people who said it was going to be bad for college football because you're letting too many teams in. But we also have seen that the best teams you're getting there off of name recognition sometimes, as we kind of alluded to earlier.
Right.
Are you okay with me personally, again, without putting too much, and we can talk about this like even professional football with the 7 seeds and everything else going forward, but do you think it's a bad thing for 12? Do you think 12 is the max? Do you think 12 is the line of demarcation? Because it feels like 12 is a good representation of allowing the big boys to still play while allowing some of the smaller schools or teams that are kind of on the cusp or good teams that face other great teams take an L early and get a chance to get back in. Do you think that 12 is a good kind of landing spot? Because I'm okay with 12.
I'm actually okay with 12. And honestly, I feel like they did the right thing of making it a 12-team playoff because a lot of teams did deserve to be in those playoffs. When you had a 14 playoff, it was a lot of drama on why the top 4 they got the top 4 wrong. Like last year with the Florida State situation, even though the quarterback went down, they still had an undefeated season and they still didn't get in the playoff because the quarterback got injured. I don't think that was fair to Florida State, in my opinion, but that was the committee at the time. So now I'm bringing in a 12-team playoff. You give exposure to teams that never got that big exposure that they did if you would have had it in the top 4. So now you got a 12-team playoff and you got teams playing well like Arizona State. If this was a 14 playoff, we would not see Arizona State in the playoff. You know why? Because they play in a MAC or I think a MAC or a Big 12 Big 12 conference that doesn't get the notoriety if it's not Oklahoma or Texas at the time. Texas in the SEC now, but I'm just saying like back in the day. But I definitely like the 12-team playoff. I do.
I do too. Again, like I don't really care, but it's just like as far as the representation of the country as a whole, as opposed to like just getting the same 4 teams, but just interchanging, or at least 2 or 3 of the same 4 teams every single year and just interchanging what their seeds are. It feels like you're getting at least a better representation. And when it comes to Arizona State, you don't have to worry about that, man. They're in I don't know if they're in the 2 Pac-12, the big West Mountain Conference. There's like 2 super conferences, then 42 other ones. I have no idea where the hell they play even right now either.
Right. And Boise State's been around for a while. They've been popular before, but they're getting their resurgence. So what they did in the regular season, it was well deserved of them getting into the playoff. But a first round bye, I kind of disagree with that. But deserving of being in the playoff because of who they played and strength of schedule and stuff of that nature, yeah, they deserve to be in it.
I think that's fair because, like, yeah, it's always one of those things where you can seeding, especially the NFL. Obviously, the seeding is the seeding. Like it's division, it's best record, like those things. Like you can't really argue. It is set in stone of like this is how you get there. But when you
Right.
have committees, the seeding matters because you're having people who are. It's not a perfect construct. It's not a perfect science. So you're never going to get it right. There's always going to be a fan uh, structure that's butthurt. There's always going to be
Mhm.
somebody else say, well, that it could have been us. Why not you? And there might be some bias. There may not. We say we have no idea, but we have a pretty good inclination. But it's, it's not a perfect science. And they've left it. If you leave it up to people,
Mhm.
people are going to get things wrong. But if you have the
Right.
construct, and that's what the NFL is like, this is how you make the playoffs. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. Like they change the rules all the time. They change how the structure works, but
Right.
there is nothing up for debate. It's this is how it works. Deal with it.
Agreed. Agreed 100%. And
But
I
let's
think
go.
if we're gonna get into it, about I feel like it should be at least an extra team in both AFC and NFC instead of 7, make it 8.
Oh, I wasn't even looking for that. This is off the cuff. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So I'm glad that you did this. This is all improv right now. Is we were going to get to like recapping and looking forward, but you want to extend the NFL playoffs because that's a very controversial take, I think, from you, is because there are so many people who are already irritated that it's gotten moved to 7 because the 7-2 matchup has been largely not good over like the last number of years. It's been whoever the 2 seed is waxing number 7.
Right.
But we also have seen like if your entire thought process is any given Sunday and anybody can beat anybody, and you want more football, which seems to be the consensus agreement upon most of America, if those are the 3 things that you align with, you should want at least another team. Whether you agree with the
Exactly.
current construct or not, but what you're saying I think makes sense. If you're dumbing it down, not even dumbing it down, that sounds poorly worded. But if you want more football and you want more any given Sunday and you just want to go on longer, check, check, check. Add another
I
team.
mean I mean, if you look at the college football playoff in the 12 team, you had some drama in those games against teams that you would never think that would be able to compete. Like I said, going back to the Arizona and Texas game, they Arizona wasn't even a favorite. They was like 35 points. Texas was like 35-point favorite. Texas was supposed to blow them out. Arizona State made it so competitive. It makes you love football even more. Like, damn, why the NFL can't be this way? So if you add that extra team, like you said, any given Sunday, it is only you win or you out when you lose. Why not just add one extra team? Especially if you have a team like what's the team? I forgot one of those teams in the NFL that had but like 10, 11 wins, but didn't make the playoffs because of the division.
Well, that was if I remember right, and there's probably a couple different circumstances, but the Patriots were a team that when Tom Brady went down, Matt Castle won 10 or 11 games and they didn't even make the playoffs.
Right.
And then you have division winners who before the 17 game sample size is 7-9. Like you get your Saints every once in a while, you get your Seahawks that go 7-9, but again, win
I think it was
because
the
it's how
Seahawks. I
it's
think
how the contract is played out. So I can see it
right.
from both angles though. So like for me, like the
Yeah,
playbook
it was
podcast.
Seattle. It was Seattle that went 10-7 this year and didn't make the playoffs. Why they can't be an AFC?
Well, see, and this is the thing where when it comes to the playbook podcast is supposed to look at everything from all angles, right? Like I can
Mhm.
understand because I agree from you, like if some folks want to just completely disband the NFL playoff system altogether, right? They want like the top 7. If you want to still keep it AFC and NFC, best 7 records. If you're going to keep the same format where there's 7 teams, best 7 teams, best 7 records in both conferences make it. Some folks want to say abolish divisions altogether. Like it doesn't really matter. Like everyone's going to have their own opinion based on what they feel. The Bengals
Right.
didn't make the playoffs, were trash for most of the year, and it's we'll put them in because it'd be more entertaining. What are we like? Everybody has something to complain about. at
Yeah.
some point in time. It's never going to be perfect for everybody because since everybody has a microphone, everybody has the internet, y'all can complain about everything and just
And
make your
yep,
feelings
yep.
want to be hurt everywhere across the world.
Facts.
Like, I don't know, man. Like, to me,
I mean, you're not going to please everybody. So it's
right.
whatever. We already heard that. Think about it. We already heard the NFL want to have an 18 game season, right? So if they want to have an 18 game season, why not add an extra team into the playoffs if you're going to have an 18 game season?
So see, I actually like that. And so on the previous incarnation of this podcast, I had said we are not far away, and this was 3 years ago. But I said we're not far away from a 20 game season. Now we're at 17. Do we get to 20? I don't know because that take may have been a little bit too hyperbolic and a little bit too not ahead of its time because it may never happen. But
Right.
given the way that people just talk about football and how they can never get enough of it, then once we got 17 games and week 18 didn't matter, now all of a sudden you guys want to pull it back again? That wasn't the narrative like 11 months ago.
Right.
Just try to be a little bit more consistent than just whatever happens right now is the worst or best thing ever. Is all I'm
Yeah.
trying to do.
Agreed. Agree with. I can't be. I can't be mad at you.
But it's like
So
I agree. Like if you want to make it, especially if you want to make it 18 games, because the thing for me is like if it was gonna ever get to 20 games, you've got to have at bare minimum 2 bye weeks in the regular season.
yeah.
Bare minimum. And you've got to stagger them where it's like first one is between week 3 and 7, the second one's between like 11 and 14.
Right.
Something like that. Because if you're
Yeah.
gonna
Something of that nature. Yeah.
but so 18 so if the NFL did go to an 18 playoff, because this is where, since we're doing this now,
Yeah.
two buys again, go back to 1 and 2 get the buy, and the other 6 are
Yeah. 1 and 2 get the bye. So it's like Arku said in the chat, he said that the team who has the better record should get a home game. So if like just for the example, if the Detroit Lions, right, which we're going to talk about it, just imagine the Detroit Lions still get the number 1 seed, right?
right.
And that puts Minnesota as what the number you could put Minnesota as the number 2 seed,
Yeah.
with just because of their record. And they win-loss column, point differential, that all that stuff goes in there. Just say that.
It'd be in the top 3 because the Eagles had like I think the 14-3. Like they would be somewhere in that. Yeah, they'd be a 1
Yeah.
through 3 somewhere.
It'll have to see. That's the only thing, because how the NFL sets it up. They set it up where all the 1, 2, 3s, and 4s are all the division winners.
Yeah.
So whoever the division winner automatically has a home game. I think if you're going to put an 8 team in each conference, I think the 1 and 2 seeds should have a home game. At least both of those.
Yeah, and it's something where I mean, as somebody like, I don't want to get this political, but as somebody like, I don't vote. So whatever happens, happens, right? Same
Yeah.
thing when it comes to NFL rules. Whatever happens, happens, man. If you change the rules, I'm still going to be a fan of football. I may not agree with everything, but I'm not going to pretend like I'm not going to watch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I would be totally okay with it they did, because in hockey, we have damn near, I think, either half or more than half the teams make the playoffs as well. And in the NFL, I think I would be okay with, if this ended up happening, yeah, top 8 seed or the top, yeah, whoever has the top 8 records in both conferences, 1 and 2 get a bye, and then everything else is 3 versus 8, and then so on and so forth, and we kind of figure out from there. But I mean, I'm not. If they choose to not change it, I'm not going to be butthurt. I'm still going to watch football. If they change it, I'm good with it too.
Right. Either or, we're going to watch football at the end of the day.
Right. So Anthony McBride says that sounds a lot like basketball format. I mean, so
it used to be like that, but now since they have like the play-in for the NBA now, so the play-in, it determines who gets those last 2 slots, like that play-in tournament. So it's not automatic that you get that 7 and 8 slot in NBA compared to the NFL.
Well, and we'll go ahead and go to the actual games real quick. But Nigel said it's not a difficult concept when your division first. Yeah, but that's the point. Is like we're talking about expansion, because the NFL changes their rules. They used to go from a 12 to a 14 to a 16 to a 17 game schedule. They've changed the playoff scenario a bunch of times. This is sports talk. We're going to talk hypotheticals.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be a part of the thing, you know. So yeah, and I think that part of the allure is you structure your team to beat who's in your division, right? Like that
Right.
is part of because the construct is the way it's set up right now. You are building yourself to beat three other teams, most specifically.
Yeah.
But why not just try to build the best football team and make it more? I'm okay for complication, man. I'm okay for more conflict. I'm okay for like, oh, I've got to beat this team twice. Nah, man. So
But I just want to put it in there for everybody that's watching on my YouTube channel. I did pin it. I put in the pin comment. Make sure y'all go subscribe to this man here. He's just been working his behind off. Playbook podcast with Prescott Kelly. Make sure y'all go and subscribe to his channel. Is in the pin comment on the YouTube. So we're live over here on the Sports Talk with Darion. But the pin comment is his link. So please go over and subscribe to his channel.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, because like I've put things more into the YouTube universe recently,
Mhm.
but you know, I'm just a white dude from Alaska. We don't get a whole lot of love up here, and I don't use it very often because like we talked, man, the numbers can get discouraging. So like the
Yeah.
Facebook place is where I kind of stay in my lane because that's where I'm more recognizable and that's where I keep
Right.
things. I've been trying to get more out into the universe of YouTube. But I appreciate you doing that. Same thing with Darion. I also have to apologize to you real quick because when I was boosting your show the other week, I was tripping over my words because I wanted to call you Dorian so many times because I've had Dorian Finney-Smith take L's on me every DraftKings lineup I do with him, man, because he stays rent free because I'm like, he plays 33 minutes a game. Dorian's gonna do me something. So when I was trying to plug you, I almost said Dorian 3 different times, and I felt so bad, man.
No, you're good. I even get that. I work with kids at a middle school, so they say sometimes they're like, "Hey, Mr. Dorian." I'm like, if they don't call him Mr. D, they like, "Hey, Mr. Dorian." So I'm like, I'm kind of used to it. Like is Darian the O is silent, but like the people I get Dorian all the time. I get it all the
No,
time, so it's nothing new.
I know, but I felt bad because I was like, he does, man. He lives rent free. He has cost me so much money in DraftKings with me to score. He's getting 35 minutes a game. He's gonna stumble into 12, 6, and 6 one of these times, and he never does.
Insane.
But anyway, let's move on to recap of this past week and then what we see going forward with the AFC and NFC championship games. So did you have a big takeaway from Ravens Bills? Because I think that this is what I've been most frustrated with over the last number of days is I put on my Chop and Peacock page, which makes no sense because of the Playbook podcast, but regardless, that the Ravens has 0 design runs for Lamar Jackson, which I know that is not something that it's not a big part of their game anyways. They would use a lot of RPOs, a lot of misdirection, I get all that, but the fact that they had 0 design runs for him shows that you at least have to account for him. And I made the same argument with the Bills when they had Stephon Diggs was the reason why the other guys were so good towards the ends of last season is they knew they weren't going to use Diggs, but he's still the threat. If you don't even have Lamar Jackson as an option as a design run, I feel like you're kind of, if the Steelers were to have this kind of meltdown, it would go right to Mike Tomlin choking again in the playoffs.
Yeah.
What we're doing now with Baltimore is that we're doing Lamar Jackson as the choker, but we're not putting any type of not even just restriction, but we're not putting any type of accountability on the Harbaugh's offensive coordinator or anybody like that. I feel like Lamar had the Josh Allen game from previous years where Josh Allen digs the Bills into a hole, digs them back out. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but he gets praised. And Lamar had that game, and it was early. And it's
It was
not,
early in the game. And people try to make it seem like, oh yeah, he had the turnovers, but it was early in the game. Like it was in the first half. Like it was I think the interception was in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
the interception was bad. I don't put the fumble
Yeah.
on him because a bad snap, you're
Just try
trying
to
to
make a play.
redirect. It happens.
So for me, I mean, yeah, they ran. I understand LaShawn said they ran RPOs, but we're not talking about RPOs. We're talking about
Right.
first
Design. Yeah,
run
because
first design for Lamar Jackson. Now, I did notice that they didn't have any design runs for him, and I was like, what's happening to the formula? Like This is what y'all wanted. Y'all wanted a Derrick Henry to match with Lamar Jackson. So you have to pick your poison defensively on who you want to shut down. I mean, you already had Derrick Henry shut down defensively for Buffalo. Use it, make him use his legs. I understand y'all try to make Lamar Jackson a pocket passer, but he's a dual threat for a reason. Let that man use his legs. You know, that's what he's good for. I mean, you see that with Jaden Daniels, you see that with Josh Allen. You see the plays called for the quarterback when it's needed. And I just feel like none of the run design plays for Lamar Jackson or direct snap for Lamar Jackson. You didn't spread your offense out and let him pick his poison in a quarterback draw. Is that simple? But we're just here to be podcasters. We don't make millions to call plays. So
No,
I
but
just
sometimes you
see it
should,
from
though.
my I see it from my perspective. I coach football. I played the game before. Like, if you got a 5 wide receiver set and it's an empty set, and you got Lamar Jackson out there, if you're not going to run the football with Lamar Jackson, something ain't right with your coaching, especially with a dynamic player like that. You know. So at the end of the day, I just think they kind of they really didn't utilize Lamar Jackson like I thought they would. He
Yeah.
was more of a passer than he was a runner in this game, and that's not really the formula for the Baltimore Ravens at all.
Well, and that was kind of thing for me is like, it feels like every single year when the playoffs happen, they want to try to push down the narrative of, Lamar's a pocket passer. No, he's a great quarterback. He's an athlete though. And the things like when I say design runs, it's not always just the fact of it's got to be some cute shotgun RPO and like he rolls out. No, what you could have done is gone because the Bills almost exclusively I don't talk a lot of Bills football. I talk Josh Allen sometimes because people can always cape up for him. What I get upset with is the fact that that team runs nickel almost exclusively. And you've got big offensive line, and both teams have good offensive line, but you got both good offensive lines, 2 big tight ends, and Patrick Ricard and Derrick Henry. Nah, man, at some point in time, you just have to impose your will and let it ride.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna do one thing real quick because I've had this conversation with Nigel a couple times. He goes, all turnovers are bad turnovers. And I'm saying in a vacuum, yes, turning the ball over is bad, but they're not all bad. If I got 4th and 20 and I'm yeeting it down the sideline and it gets picked off at the 4 and I'm at my own 45, I don't care. Like not all turnovers are created equal. I gotta stop.
Agreed.
I need to do that real quick. But no, I think that what we come down to is like, and we're getting a lot of, Mark Andrews is the problem or was the issue. I can understand the argument because the fumble was atrocious. Like, I don't know what the hell
that was terrible by Mark Andrews.
What the hell homie was doing on that one. But and the thing I think that I need to let people know is Buffalo still almost fumbled this game.
Yeah.
Like, if you get that 2-point conversion, this thing goes into overtime and like the entire narrative changes if Mark Andrews makes that catch. But I've seen people say, well, Lamar's got to make a better throw. That is a catchable ball for a professional football player. Make that catch, bro. But I also understand
he threw that ball on the money. That's on Mark Andrews to make that catch. You make millions as a tight end, as a catch a tight end, consider a top 5 tight end in this league, and you just in them moments you have to catch the football. It's that simple.
I get it because I live in Alaska, right? So like when we get this whole feels like -5, it doesn't feel good, man. Like it's catching something. So I can see it from the perspective of, Lamar's got to make a better throw. It's like, but no, but it's cold for him too. It's supposed to be a catchable ball, but I understand if you want to put more blame on Mark Andrews, then fine. Like I get it. But again, it's not like we haven't seen these games where Josh Allen has put his team in holes, had to dig them out and still lost, but we still don't blame him because he's like the white Superman quarterback that we all just love.
People could say Lamar Jackson double clutched that pass
stand up
too.
for other people.
You seen he double clutched that pass, but it was still catchable. The fact that he had the ball, he had it tucked, and it just came out. No matter if he double clutched or not, it was still a catchable ball.
Yeah.
Like quarterbacks is not going to throw a perfect ball every time. They're just not. And that's what I feel like when it comes to like media or people that know football. you can't blame everything on the quarterback. You still have a defense that gave up a whole long drive for Lamar to be in that situation. Number one.
Right.
Number two, you almost gave up a 2-point conversion defensively.
He was
did
open enough where it was like it was a shutdown too on defense. Like it's just that's how slim the margins are. If he makes that catch, all of a sudden we're not talking about how good the Bills defense is. No, we're talking about a dropped pass as opposed to you let him drive with hardly any time left. You let them basically tie the game up. You were up big in the first half, and y'all squandered things again and got tight. And you got the lemon pucker booty, man. Like they got tight again. And it's just, I don't know who's gonna win next week, but let's be serious. The Bills and Josh Allen wasn't great. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, and they came at timely opportunity times, but he wasn't fantastic the entire game. Like we just needed.
I agree 100%. Like you said, so LaShawn said you don't throw a rollout inside of Andrew's momentum is to the sideline. Where are you throwing to the inside? I'm a QB, and I'm telling you that's not a good pass.
It wasn't
just because it wasn't a good pass doesn't mean it wasn't catchable.
Yeah, they can't all be right on the dot. And I mean, like again, holding the football at like -5 what feels like degree weather, they're not all going to be perfect. And like again, the Playbook Podcast is here to look at from everybody's angles. Could it have
been from so many different angles?
Could it have been a better throw? Because we saw better throws from him that game, absolutely. But also, he's a professional and gets paid millions of dollars too. And I've seen him make better catches in worse conditions and not place as accurately. No, these things are so minute as far as where we want to pick apart and where we want to say you're at fault. We'd rather blame somebody than say, no, you know what, who lost today? The Baltimore Ravens lost.
Right.
From coaching to quarterback play to Mark Andrews to everybody else in between. The Ravens lost.
The team lost. And at the end of the day, they're home in Buffalo going to Kansas City. So that's going to be a very as a Raiders fan, this sucks for me, man. This sucks.
I'll tell you what, because I'll get to the Raiders real quick if you want to, because Greg John, I'm not sure if Greg is his last name.
Yeah, Greg John.
Okay, because he had asked who the next Raiders head coach is. Do you have any inclination before we get to like the actual playoffs again?
Honestly, I don't know who's going to be the coach because everybody was high on Ben Johnson, which we will talk about that in the segment about Ben Johnson going to the Bears. Everybody was high on Ben Johnson. I mean, we did have a good interview with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is a good coach, but he's just old as hell. That's the problem with that. So, I mean, we interviewed Robert Slyer. So, I mean, whatever happens, happens. As long as we have a good offensive coordinator and a good defensive coordinator, that's all I care about.
What I think with because I know that people they jump to conclusions so much and just draw whatever they want to from the end of it, right? It's where, well, Tom Brady is calling the Lions game, and Ben Johnson is, he's going to be up for. Tom Brady should be able to call that game because he'll be able to like influence Ben Johnson. It's like, bro, what are we doing here? Like that's like I'm
hearing that Ben Johnson wasn't even a front runner for the Raiders. So I want to know who was the front runner. I would love to hear that.
I want to ask you one thing first, though, because I and obviously you and I didn't know each other when I did this show initially, like when I first got this thing off the ground. But when Antonio Pierce went from interim head coach to head coach, the one thing I said was like, man, we need to stop doing this because all too often the interim head coach, because he kind of grows up the rankings, right? Like he has a closer relationship with players, it feels like, and doesn't have all the responsibilities. So players like him more. And maybe you fight from the first 2 or 3 games. But when he got the head coaching gig, I was like, this might be a backfire for them. And I don't want to just say it clearly was because the Raiders have been the Raiders. But again, like it's one of those things where like everything is cyclical. It's also like you play in a division with Patrick Mahomes, who's going to win 11 to 12 to 13 games every single year, and you're probably going to lose to him every year twice. And if not, best case scenario, you split. Now Harbaugh's there. it's a tough situation to be in, and I feel like you're just going to recycle guys until like you have to allow this thing to play out for at least a 4-year deal. Let the guy get his own people, get his own. I You're running into what Manning was, or not Manning, but what Brady was doing in the AFC East before Brady finally decided to leave. Incompetent franchises or bad quarterback play, and you just eat off of that. And the Raiders are in the same position, but they're not the only
Right on
team that's
point,
doing that.
man.
But
You right on point. Just like Nigel said, take it from a Cowboys fan. The problem is the guy up top, and that's what Mark Davis is. Mark Davis already came out and said that he's going to let Tom Brady do these interviews, but I need Mark Davis to not say a word at this point. I need Mark Davis just to be Mark Davis. Just make your money with that ugly hairdo, and just make your money.
I was gonna say, stay
Make your money. Just let the football people do the football operations that know what they're doing.
Yeah, stay quiet with your bowl haircut.
The haircut is terrible.
It's so bad, dude. No,
it's so bad.
But didn't you hear his girlfriend loves him for his personality and his looks? No. Good luck doing that.
That is hilarious. But I mean, once I've seen that we hired Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator, I knew the season was going into shit. I already knew. Luke Getsy was terrible, and it almost ended Justin Fields' career in Chicago. So then we end up getting Gardner Minshew, knowing that guy is not a starter in this league.
Bro,
I'm like, okay, so you already went out and got a Gardner Minshew. And you went out, you didn't go and address the running back position after we let Josh Jacobs go. Did you trade Devontae Adams out of Las Vegas after all that stuff that went on the whole year? It was just I knew this year was done after week 4. I already knew.
Bro, I'm so tired of people talking about Gardner Minshew because it's the same thing. It's every single year. And I brought this up with LaShawn because he's been on the show a couple different times. And I'm like, yo, you got the quarterbacks, you got the backups, and you got the white dude who backs up certain guys. And if you have the certain roster construction, like, oh, at least we got Gardner Minshew to back up. No, man, he's a backup for a reason. Like, stop gassing this dude up because he's going to have one game where he goes for 250, 2 tuds and no picks. And then he's going to go for 133, 3 interceptions and 1 TD. And it's every single, and it's rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. Like, I'm just tired of people doing that. Him and Joe Flacco and all these other dudes. Stop it. Stop.
They back us for a reason.
Yes. And I got no problem if you want to pay them backup money, but just whenever the backup quarterback is the backup quarterback for a reason. When they come in, there's not a whole lot of tape. Maybe they win you 2 or 3 games if they got to play for a month, maybe. But stop. Y'all remember when Cooper Rush was like 5-1 with Dak when Dak went out?
Yeah.
They wanted him to be the starter? Nah, come on, man. We are not doing that here.
But before we get into it, let me just tell you my theory of what the Raiders offseason will look like. Whoever's the offensive coordinator, if we get Liam Cohen from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as our head coach, this is what I think we should do, right? People might not like this, but y'all can say whatever y'all want. Liam Cohen has revived Baker Mayfield's career in Tampa Bay, right? If I'm not mistaken. The numbers are getting better every year with Baker Mayfield. So if I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, I go get Liam Cohen as the head coach, as an offensive minded coach, because we had too many defensive minded coaches at one point. Go get your defensive coordinator. Don't know what defensive coordinator. I'm not worried about that. But instead of you trying to move up in the draft and get a quarterback, and you got to pay that man all that money because he's going to be a top 5, top 4 pick. If we do trade up in the draft, you're going to lose out on a lot of our cap space. We're number 3 or number 2 in the NFL in cap space this year for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, that's why you should trade up, is because you can just kick the can down the line because you don't got to pay him $60 million a year for another 4 years.
But if we don't trade up, Justin Fields is a free agent. He's 26 years old. Ooh, you don't have to break the bank. You could put your money towards the offensive line, get you another receiver with Brock Bowers. You can, and you can still spend money because now Max Crosby doesn't have he don't have any more guaranteed money in his contract. You could reconstruct his contract, give him more guaranteed money. You can maneuver things now Will you go out and get a Justin Fields on like a 2-year deal, but you don't have to break the bank for him because he's younger? Why not?
Like I don't hate Justin Fields as much as most people do. I feel like Justin Fields is one of those dudes where it was Chicago. What do you expect him to do?
Right.
And Caleb Williams is the guy who really got all the talent. DJ Moore was still there last year, but you know what I'm saying though is like they
Yeah,
finally
it was the
they
offensive line
grabbed from
issue in
Doomsday.
Chicago.
They get Keenan out. Yeah, exactly. So I don't necessarily believe that Justin Fields is the answer for like a quarterback. But the thing we kind of just talked about this earlier was if Kansas City is still going to have a stranglehold on this division as long as we think that they're going to, then yeah, then don't pay a top 5 quarterback. Go ahead and get Justin Fields. And again, it's all speculation at this point in time. But if you're bad for another year, you can get another wide receiver, you can get another offensive lineman, you can let him play out his contract. And the long play is once Patrick Mahomes turns 40, you guys can be good. It's a long-term play.
So Nigel saying you don't think Fields is him. But can you tell me any quarterback that's in the draft that's better than Justin Fields right now? That can actually tell us to go.
He's going to come at you with Shador and Cam Ward right off the top, and then maybe a couple other dudes.
I'm not a Cam Ward fan. It's not just because of his game; it's his personality. Him with that personality in Las Vegas, I just don't like his character. Now Shador, that's a different story. But But Shador, it's this whole situation with Deion and his playing with, coming up to the NFL and trying to coach with his son again. I don't want that situation. I want Shador to be Shador Sanders and not just be under Deion. But if I'm going to pay Shador Sanders and get him go bump all the way up to number 2, you know how much money I got to give him?
Do you think he goes number 2? So are you thinking that Travis Hunter goes 1 then?
I think Trevor Hunter go 1. If the Patriots stay at number 1, they don't need a quarterback. They need a playmaker. In which Travis Hunter is the playmaker.
I think that's the biggest caveat is if they stay, because I've been, again, I don't want to pretend like I'm some huge college football fan because I'm not, but I know enough about Travis Hunter where I've put out into the universe a couple different times. Like if I need a wide receiver, and if I'm like in that top 5 realm, I'm not taking Travis Hunter. If I need a cornerback, I'm not taking him in the top 5 either. What I would suggest is if you get the number 1 overall pick, you can, again, like you said with New England, you don't need to get a quarterback right now. Trade down. I think that he suits best for a team that I would like to still see him play both sides of the ball, but not play it as much as he did at Colorado. Like if you have a team that's already got 2 good wide receivers and he can be your slot guy or a 3rd wide receiver, I'm good with that. If you've got a good secondary already and he can be your nickel, and then he can grow into being your number 1, number 2 or corner, and that's fine as well. So like it's one of those teams that's like got guys like Jacksonville, I think would be a really good place where he can be another wide receiver, it could be another good corner and play both sides of the ball still. But number 1, if you're the number 1 pick, you got to be a difference maker on like immediately. And if he's going to New England, I don't know if that fits because their wide receiving core is still trash. And besides Christian Gonzalez, I can't name basically one more dude on their defense even.
I could see that, but I could just say like right now, if Travis Hunter go to New England, he probably be the best receiver they have. If he plays on the offense, if he's off his side of the ball. But for me, I think he will play both sides, but I think it'll be more on a special team situation than he was playing wide receiver and DB. Because think about it, being in college football, you could do that. The NFL, they are bigger, they are stronger, they are faster. I think he would be a great return man in the punt game and in the kicking game for any team in the NFL. And let that man just strictly play defense. If you want to put in some packages for Travis Hunter, cool. But he's not going to be, but I just don't see him being a full-time DB and wide receiver on an NFL team. I just don't see that.
And I guess that's the thing that you have to, as an organization, you have to define that. Like when you have these pre-draft interviews, I feel like you have to find out what his motive is. If he wants to strictly play defense and you don't need a corner, all right, then he's probably off your board. If he wants to play wide receiver and you need one, maybe goes on. But again, like I'm somebody where if he's that talented at every single level, I feel like you have to be able to put your best players on the field as much as possible. But the problem is like most football players are specialists. You
Right.
only play guard, only play tackle, only play safety, only play corner, only play wide receiver. So, but he's a different dude where you'd want to put him in there as much as possible, but you also can't overexpose him, like you said. The more snaps you get, the more potential there is for injury. So
Mhm.
it's if you package him up in the right way, he can be a difference maker on both sides of the ball, enough plays every game. And in the return game, I think that'd be hot too.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm ready for championship round. I'm ready for the
Championship
championship.
round. Let's go. So we had some interesting games over the divisional round, but we are now at championship Sunday, where we've got Commandos at Eagles, Bills at Chiefs. Is there anything that you are kind of worried about for either team? Or either game, I guess I should say.
I am
Who would
worried
be the most
about
upset?
this Eagles defense versus Jaden Daniels.
Ooh.
I'm gonna be honest with you. This offense for the Commanders looks very scary. They do. I mean, you got Zach Ertz coming back to Philadelphia, knowing that he's had most of his career in Philadelphia.
Oh, revenge game.
Revenge game. They split the division already. The Eagles beat them once, Commanders beat them at the end of the year. But every time you saw the Commanders play,
Too.
but every time you saw the Commanders play, they offense elevated. Now they lost Austin Eckler for a lot of games during the season, but Austin Eckler is a big reason. They might just win this game if they could put on methodical drives in time of possession with the run game, Jaden Daniels, and keep getting first downs to keep that Eagles offense on the sideline. Commanders have a chance. The only issue I have with the Commanders in itself is their defense, their run defense against Saquon Barkley. Now, their pass defense, they're second in the league in pass defense. And I did this preview last week of, I'm like, oh, Jared Goff might have himself a tough time because they're second in pass defense. And Jared Goff struggling. His completion percentage is always above 70. But he
This
made
year
Jared,
Yeah, this
he humbled Jared Goff in the divisional round. And Jalen Hurts is going to have to play better football throwing the ball against this team, or he's going to have to use his legs a lot. So I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to be rattled. He played in big games in college. The bigger the game is, the better he gets. So for me, if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, it's the same thing. You run the ball down the Commanders' throat. They are dead last in run defense. You give Saquon Barkley and Kenneth Gainwell those runs and keep Jaden Daniels on the sideline. Now you got Terry McLaurin on one side, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on another side. De'Ami Brown has came up to be big for the Commanders. This game is tough to really pick. Honestly, it's tough. They look very identical, and it's the Beast of the East Part 3.
Yeah, I think the thing for me, like when I look at this team, is that and we'll get to, I guess the reason why I still have Philly, and honestly, Philadelphia defies everything that at my core value of football. They defy everything that I've ever thought, which is when it comes to the playoffs, I gotta trust your coach and I gotta trust your quarterback, and I trust neither of them. But they continue to win because the roster is ridiculous. The defense is played out of its mind. And it is something where so I talked about this with Detroit last week, is that if they break character, same thing, like with all these teams, if you have a legitimate identity, if you break character, you have the tendency to get out of pocket and lose. In Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs was averaging 10 yards a carry. You broke away from it. The offensive line was supposed to be your strength. And like what you said with Washington, if they can sustain drives and keep Philly off the field, Washington doesn't really do that though. They get a lot of big chunk plays. Jaden Daniels' deep ball is ridiculous. He throws a perfect ball, and I feel like they want to get up on these track meets. And Philly, to me, did something a few weeks ago, which is exactly what you just talked about what Washington needs to do. It was they were on the 2-yard line. It had like a 30-play drive for 98 yards, and it ate up like 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And they have the ability to do that because they do have the offensive line. They do have the running game. For me, if they don't break character and they let Saquon Barkley have 20 plus touches, they let Gainwell have 6 or 7, they have design runs for Jalen Hurts. And if they let those safeties creep up and they take their shots when they can with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown kind of dig underneath, I feel like Philadelphia should win this game. But Jaden Daniels, you're right. He's been so good. But I made the mistake last week, and I said it doesn't hit the ears right when I say Washington Commanders NFC Championship game. It certainly doesn't
Yeah,
hit the
it
ear right.
doesn't.
And like Super Bowl bound Washington Commandos, that doesn't hit right either. So I'm really just going emotion more than anything else. But if Philly doesn't break character and they let Saquon do Saquon things and don't expose Jalen Hurts, I feel like they should be able to roll them, because what you had alluded to with Washington to do, Philadelphia can, as
Mhm.
long as Sirianni doesn't do Sirianni things.
Agreed. Agreed. I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles, but it's really hard to pick against the Commanders, just the way they've been playing in these playoffs and down the stretch going into the playoffs. They've just been
It's
playing
wild.
so well. So well. You know, the offensive line has been great. I think they did lose one of their best offensive linemen in the game in Detroit last week, which I think that's going to be a big factor because Jalen Carter is going to be a factor in the middle. Him and Jordan
Oh,
Davis, those two is going to be a beast. And those linebackers for the Philadelphia Eagles, they just get better and better. Even without Nakobe Dean, they just get better. Cooper DeJean is having a hell of a year as a rookie, which I think was a hell of a pick getting him from out of Iowa. I wanted him as a Raider, but hey, Eagles know how to draft now, so unlike the Raiders. But yeah, I'm gonna take the Eagles here. It won't be a blowout. They definitely gonna come and compete. I say Jake Elliott kicks a field goal. It's gonna be a 3-point win.
ooh, I don't know the spread is yet, but yeah, it's just one of those things where like we talked a little bit about Ben Johnson earlier, and again, it felt like they, as for somebody who was supposed to be this offensive genius, and we've seen it. I want to get to Buffalo and Kansas City in a moment though, but we saw what everybody had Ben Johnson on this pedestal, and
Mhm.
they're assuming that he can just transfer it back over from Detroit to Chicago, but you don't have the same players that you do in Chicago as you did in Detroit. Now you can make the counter offer that he helped make that team what they are. So maybe he gets an elevated level of Roma Dunze and Swift and everybody else like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say this, like, we were praising Detroit all year long for their trick plays, being cute when they executed. But when their season was on the line and they were only down 10, and I said, if you lose who you are, you're going to lose this game. No Jameer Gibbs. They weren't running the ball. You left the fate of your hands in a reverse to Jamison Williams, who, if George Pickens didn't exist, would be the laughing stock of the NFL, guy who's got busted for PEDs and gambling. And instead of your quarterback making the throw, you put it in the hands of that guy. I would be worried if that's what you think is going to be going on in Chicago, and that's going to work, because I don't
Now
think it will.
I can't. People want to blame Ben Johnson of the play calling. Yes, I think that was a bad play call in itself. But are we going to blame Are we going to blame Ben Johnson for how the Detroit Lions defense gave up 45 points to the Commanders?
No, but this is why football is such a beautiful game, though, right? Is because
Yeah.
45 points is 45 points. I get that. But when Jared Goff isn't having his best game, does your defense step up? But is it the defense's fault too that they had 5 turnovers and giving, at some point in time, giving Washington short fields? That's not their fault either. Like, I just feel like it was a cumulative effort of offense was bad, defense has been bad, and it has been because of injuries, right? So I don't want to just
Right. They've been decimated by injuries all year.
right, and we can dumb it down to next man up, but the next man up is the next man up for a reason, and not the guy who got hurt. He was on the
Agreed.
bench for a reason. Like,
That means you
you're
got to
not
go out and get depth. You got to go out and
right.
get depth. So it's just that simple. But speaking of Ben Johnson, I had this Detroit Lions YouTuber named Lions Syndicate. I know him personally. His name used to be called the Gridiron Blitz. Big Detroit Lions fan. he feel like it's ironic 48 hours after Detroit loses in the divisional game that Ben Johnson becomes the Bears head coach in their own division.
Wow, we
I
see players
mean,
do it all the time.
I don't see it as a coinky dink. I mean, he knew that he was out the door. He even told the team after the game that he's not coming back as the offensive coordinator. So if he already notified the team after the loss, how can you blame Ben Johnson for taking the job in Chicago? I understand it's in your division, but now the question is going to be up for Ben Johnson in Chicago. Who's going to be your OC, or you going to call the offense, or who's going to be your DC? What the
See,
coaches are going to look like. And the number one thing for the Chicago Bears that's been lacking for many years, it is an offensive line. How will he address the offensive line? That's the biggest question for me as Ben Johnson as the head coach.
I
Caleb Williams
believe,
was like damn near the most sacked quarterback in the league last year.
yeah, I believe the reason why he chose Chicago is because he's had other opportunities. I feel like some places weren't willing to give him the power that he wants. I think that year one, okay, now this may not be, it might be completely different, but I believe the reason why he picked Chicago is because he's going to be able to be the play caller. He's going to have more control. Now, if they struggle year one, maybe he goes and hires another OC. But this is the whole thing. Like whenever we hire guys from a tree, and the Dan Campbell tree is very, very recent, right? Like
Yeah,
the Belichick tree, the Reed tree has been way more successful than the Belichick tree. The Belichick tree has
agreed.
basically been a complete, utter failure. So we're starting a new tree now with Dan Campbell, with Glenn and Johnson. But when you're the guy, and not the guy behind the scenes, we think that we're getting a reincarnation of like Dan Campbell's enthusiasm, but Ben Johnson's ability to call plays. And at some point in time, like for me personally, one, you're right, the offensive line needs to be addressed. But I think he took that job because he gets to be the head coach and the offensive coordinator. But before we move on to Buffalo and Kansas City, I want to say, do you think they got the right guy? Because I feel like what we do too often is we say we need to get an offensive minded head coach because we've done this thing down to the fact of it's an offensive league, it's a quarterback league, it's a passing league. But when we look at who are the teams that have been consistently in AFC and AFC championship games and divisional rounds over the past number of years, Harbaugh was in the playoffs as a rookie, back to being a rookie head coach this year.
Yeah,
McDermott's is a defensive minded head coach.
yeah,
Harbaugh is, D'Amico Ryans is. Um, I mean, Andy Reid, I think, is where we consider more of an offensive guy, but
yeah.
you know, head coach again, it's Dan Campbell, it's Dan Quinn. Like to me, it's more important to get the right head coach, not an offensive minded head coach, because the head coach is like they don't always call the defense or always call the offense.
The offense,
You
right?
need the right dude. Getting an offensive dude doesn't just automatically make Caleb Williams exponentially better. So will Ben Johnson make that team better? I would like to think so. But to just instantly think that it's going to be this offensive juggernaut because they have Ben Johnson, I think is being disingenuous and reaching too far too quick.
I think they saying that just because of the weapons that they have in Chicago with
Like
Caleb
Keenan
Williams.
Allen's old as hell and Rome Odunze was a rookie.
Right. And then you still have DJ Moore and Cole Kmet as your tight ends with DeAndre Swift. So he does that. He has had the offensive weapons. That's why I feel like it was more intriguing for Ben Johnson to go to the Bears and the Las Vegas Raiders, because if you look at our situation, I mean, our offensive line is not as bad. It's just that we don't have any star power for him to come over there. Like we didn't have no
Right.
real star power running back. We don't have, even though people might say what they can say about Jacoby Myers, but that man barely dropped the ball this year, even with the bad team that he had. Look at his drop catch ratio, and I'll tell you, is less drops and more catches. I'm just saying, just that's even with Devontae Adams at the time. So it wasn't intriguing, I think, from a player aspect. That's why he didn't pick the Raiders. But if you look at the offense around Caleb Williams, it's really just an offensive line that you really just need to address on the offensive line. Defense, I think the defense is not as bad. You could tweak a little certain places on the defense, but offense has been the number one issue on why, Caleb been sacked most of the times. And even going back to Justin Fields, going back to any other quarterback that was a Chicago Bear in the last 5 to 6 years was the offensive line.
Yeah. I think with Vegas as well, and we'll go on. I know we've said this like 3 different times, but I want to lead with this is that I feel like whoever they get as their next head coach, what New England intended to do, or what they said they were going to do with Mayo, they've got to do with their next head coach. Saying that you're going to give him 3 years, but can him after 1 because it was convenient and because Vrabel was still available. I feel like there was never, ever, ever any intention for them to give him a 3-year plan. And that's not obviously just because they can him after 1 year. It just didn't feel that way. And again, he kind of set his own table to be left from it because of how he handled press game conferences, which to me isn't a big deal. But when you're the organization, you're the owner, I get it. But when you go to the Raiders, you have to understand this is going to be a project. And if you're going to give that man, whoever it is, 3 or 4 years, you better give them 3 or 4 years because they going to need it.
We already know.
Kansas City.
We already know. I feel like if we decide to go with Pete Carroll, I'm just saying hypothetically, if we decide to go with him, you have to bring in a competent, not an incompetent, but a competent offensive coordinator and a competent defensive coordinator. We all know that Pete Carroll is more on the defensive side of the ball than he is offensively. So he needs to bring, I mean, if you want to look at the Pete Carroll tree, the Pete Carroll tree is just as good too. I mean, Dan Quinn was under that Pete Carroll tree. When he was part of Legion of Boom, he was the defensive coordinator for Pete Carroll in them Seahawk days. So now Pete Carroll being old enough and being older than what he is when he was coaching with Seattle, now he's really going to have to structure this team. I'm not saying win right now, but at least look better than what we did this past year. Make some improvements and because like one thing about the Raiders is inconsistency. We go through GMs, we go through coaches. We really have to, if we want to get in Pete Carroll or bring a coach in, it has to be a 3 or 4 year plan. And you have to keep them at least for 3 years. That's all I'm asking. 3 years just to see how this thing turn around. Because we had John Gruden. John Gruden had a terrible first year when he got him back for the second time. And then the last 2 years before the whole debacle happened, with the emails, we had winning records until that happened. So, and then we end up getting Josh McDummy. So, you know, that's another story for another time. But we could get into Kansas City and Buffalo. I don't want to get into Josh McDummy. I just don't.
I understand your pain. Well, I'll save you from that. So before the game itself, I saw something that Andy Reid is really, really, really close, taking over postseason wins and everything. Like, I know that that's been a talking point for a while, but I know that Bill Belichick is supposed to be the head coach at UNC, but allegedly he hasn't signed everything. And with Andy Reid creeping up, I'm not entirely certain that Bill Belichick is completely done in the NFL. I think I could see him making a comeback. Yay or nay on that?
I can see him making a comeback, but I feel like I think North Carolina is going to give him the bag to not go back to the NFL. I think he's going. I think they're going to might add on a signing bonus or something of that nature. And I think Bill Belichick would be good for college football. I think he's done everything he needs to do in the NFL. What is else that Bill Belichick needs to do in the NFL at this point?
He needs to stay away from football and have fun with his 28-year-old girlfriend. We don't need another white guy in college.
Maybe in college football, you can do that. Maybe in college football don't start until August? He got some time. I mean, I know he probably want to go do recruiting and stuff like that, but that's what you have your recruiters for. That's what you have your staff for.
But look, man, all I know is that by the Playbook podcast, the playbook is he's been the coach of a team and not coached a game beforehand. Old habits die hard.
I can't disagree with you there.
I want to see like the old crotchety man, the walrus and the hoodie go back and forth and just staying in that 1 and 2 games their entire career and see who ends up with more wins when they're both like 860 years old.
But if he decides to stay, if he does decide to leave UNC and go back to the NFL, this is all I'm gonna say. Las Vegas Patriots. That's all I'm gonna say.
Las Vegas Patriots. Well, I mean, when you say that, I was when Sean McDermott became the coach of the Bills, all they were doing was draft, like just trading for and signing former players from the Panthers. And I call them, the Carolina Buffaloes, the Buffalo Panthers. And like that was kind of the same, almost kind of the same feel. And I could see if he goes to Vegas, he'll hijack people from the Patriots camp and whatever the case.
Just bring Josh McDaniels back. Let him go back to New England. Don't bring Josh McDaniels back.
Yeah, you stay away from Vegas, dog. We don't need you. But KC Buffalo. So most people thought that Buffalo and Baltimore was whoever won that game is going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Which I would have thought that would have been an AFC championship game, in my opinion. That was an AFC championship game worthy, in my opinion.
But see, now we've done this twice with the Bills in the past 4 years. This game, and then when they played the Chiefs, well, that was the Super Bowl. That was the AFC championship. Well, that's the problem with the way the seeding is. No, it's not.
Right.
That's not how this works. But are you concerned? It's in Kansas City. What do you think are the tools to win for both teams in this particular game?
It's very simple for Buffalo. Don't touch Patrick Mahomes.
Rush, but put your hands up. Don't even do
just go like this. Because those not black and white stripes, the red and white stripes of the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to throw the flag every time you touch Patrick Mahomes. Even you saw it when he flopped, when he got a little pushed out of bounds. You seen when he slid and the two Texans hit themselves in the head. They rarely hit Patrick Mahomes, but they hit each other. They end up colliding with each other. They called a roughing up. They called a roughing I think it was roughing the passer on the Texans. Just get there and just go like this. If you're a defensive end or defensive tackle or linebacker, don't touch Patrick Mahomes. You know why? Because you're going to get a flag every time.
And I wonder, see, this is what I worry about those, because that's the thing is extending drive. So I don't want to be that guy. I told Stephen Mumon, I told Matt Sierra, who are Bills fans who follow this particular page, that if the calls are the calls, I'm not going to be that guy, because the helmet to helmet on Mahomes in the pocket as minimal, and because I have to overcorrect. I've done this with Josh Allen as far as people saying that he's awesome. I'm like, no, there's still flaws. I have to overcorrect, and I'm going to do it with Bills fans right now. That helmet to helmet hit with Mahomes, letter of the law, that's the correct call. It may have been very, 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 very minimal, and in the playoffs, you would like for it not to be called. I agree with you. But letter of the law, that's the call. Same thing with the out of bounds thing.
Unfortunately.
By letter of the law, the way he got hit out of bounds, that's a judgment call. But I also understand why you'd be furious if you're a Ravens fan with something more egregious happening to Lamar Jackson on the side of the Buffalo game and that not getting called when he's already out of bounds. I get it.
But we saw in the Texans game how Dalton Schultz got tackled with the hip roll tackle, and they didn't call that.
That's true. But see,
he could have broke his leg there the way that hip roll tackle happened, but the refs didn't call that, and the ref was standing right there.
But here's the thing: when people say the Chiefs are cheating, it's not like we're playing pickup basketball and defense calls fouls, right?
Yeah.
Because you're on offense and you're like, oh, that was a hack. No, it wasn't. Ball's part of the hand, man. It's like they're not the ones throwing out the yellow laundry every time that it happens. So I mean, they aren't cheating. And if you want it to stop, I think as America as a whole, we've had these back and forth with different issues. If it bothers you that much, then don't support the product. But you can't. You can't not support it. You're going to no matter what. If everybody in America just stopped driving their cars, the price of gas would go down, right? If everybody stopped watching football for a day,
the views would go down
It's
ridiculously.
never going to happen, though. So, I mean, but, and our Nigel makes a little bit of a point is that's the thing is that drawing fouls is part of the game, and we appreciate it when it's our team. When it's not, we got something to say about it. And that's where the issue lies, is it's not consistent from fans or the officials in a lot of these cases.
Well, coming from a Raiders fan that played the Chiefs twice, I mean, It's the Queefs versus the Bills. That's what we call them. We call them the Queefs. Win, lose, or draw. We call them the Queefs.
Well, and I get it. I get it. I'm with you to a degree when it comes to now. Here's the thing that's going to happen though is that the stigma behind Mahomes is that he gets the most penalties called when in reality it has been Josh Allen over the past like 6-7 years. It has been Josh Allen draws more unsportsmanlike penalties, more roughing the passers than any other quarterback. Some of it's the style of play, and when you put yourself in those positions, you put yourself in a position to one get hurt more often, but also get those opportunities for flags.
Right.
So I am somebody who this is going to be it's the stigma and the mystique about Mahomes getting every single call versus Josh Allen who calls for every call and whines about a lot of calls that most Bills fans don't want to acknowledge. And it's going to be the great flop versus the great flop, and which one's going to get more calls. And like you said, like you almost have to be so conservative of how you play these quarterbacks where you don't want to give them free first downs. You don't want to give them free 15 yards. It's almost better to like let it dink and dunk and whatever happens as opposed to trying to impose your will, because if you do with these two guys specifically, you have no idea how the outcome is going to be.
I think what I see in this game between Buffalo and Kansas City is their running backs with Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, and you got James Cook. I think whoever run the ball better in this game will win this game. I mean, even though Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, they are phenomenal. They are great quarterbacks. I have to take my Raider fandom out of it and just be a football fan at this point. They are incredible quarterbacks, but you got to establish a running game. And I think James Cook has been one of the most underrated running backs in the league, in my opinion.
He's been awesome.
People don't see the way James Cook run the ball. We all know what Isaiah Pacheco could do. We all know what Kareem Hunt could do. They get talked about all the time, even while they are injured. James Cook don't get that notoriety. Just doesn't. And the way he runs the football, and like he like a little small kid, but he has a lot of heart and a lot of power to him that he will destroy you if you definitely are in front of him. So it's going to come down to the running game and who has the ball last at the end.
I feel like that last point I think is really accurate. I think this is going to come down to a one score game. And if it goes into overtime, at least Bills fans finally got what they wanted in having an opportunity to get the ball back this time, if for whatever case he gets the ball first,
Right.
But it's something where I've seen a lot of disrespect to Bills receivers, saying that Josh Allen's done more with less. And I've been very, very much an advocate for the Ravens. You could even put the Chiefs wide. They're much differently constructed. But as far as like talent wise, we don't consider DeAndre Hopkins to be the same guy that he used to be. I don't consider Zay Flowers to be a top even 15 wide receiver, even though he was the first Pro Bowler that the Ravens have ever had. But the Bills wide receiving core works for what they want to do. And I'm tired of the disrespect to like Khalil Shakir, because I feel like he's a very another underrated wide receiver. But if we're
very underrated,
if we're going to go, who's your top 15 wide receivers, he doesn't sniff it, but he works for what Buffalo needs to do. And I've always been the proponent of, I don't want to get back into like the antiquated way of football where you have to run the football to set the pass. You have to run the ball. You have to establish it. But I come from the school of thought of, you have to be able to do it effectively and circumstantially. If you can't do when you need to and can at least make it somewhat effective, that's where it comes in. Like, I don't feel like you have to run the ball on first and second down to set up play action. That's a super old school way of thinking about football.
Yeah, old school way of doing it.
Now, but the elements have something to do with that too. And like you said, like the Chiefs have Pacheco and Hunt, who are very aggressive, hard runners. James Cook is somebody who has the heart in him, but he's a really sly, shifty dude. But they also have Davis and Johnson. If the Bills, and this has always been my thing, if the Bills don't break character, if the Bills make Josh Allen be Superman, they will lose this game. If they've done what they've done all season, spread the wealth, let every wide receiver get their 3 or 4 targets, let James Cook get 15 carries, let Ty Johnson get 5 or 6, let Davis, like, just but when Josh Allen has the ability to pick you off when you can't, when he needs to, that's great. But when you have him put the cape on, he has the ability to either make really bad decisions through the air or turn the ball over because he's trying to fight off 6 defensive tackles or 6 defensive linemen. He is just, if you can spread the wealth and then once the opportunity hits, he takes advantage of it. Buffalo can win this game as long as they don't break script and don't put everything in his hands. They can, and that might be the first. That might be the first football game I've ever enjoyed in the past 15 years. Because I've been so much of the stop being the Bills bandwagon. Because if you weren't with us when we were losing 4 Super Bowls, you don't get to be with us when we haven't been to one in 30 years. Like, you're not allowed to do that.
Right. I would like to see this from Joe Brady, though. You need to get these tight ends involved. You need to get them involved, even though with Kincaid and Knox, they have to get involved. Because even though that you do have Shakir and Amari Cooper, but it takes a lot of weight off those receivers. Plus, it takes a lot of weight off Josh Allen to be your security blanket when you need it. So if I'm Joe Brady, I'm putting a game plan together for these tight ends, even though you already have a game plan for Josh Allen and what he could do with his legs. But I want Josh Allen to extend plays and look at the tight ends. I don't really want him to just keep running as a QB run every single, or back-to-back downs. If you need it on the 4th and 1, like a tush push, fine.
Right.
But you have weapons that, I mean, you have weapons. I feel like Kansas City defense is not that, to me, they're not that elite.
For what? I'm sorry?
It's just Chris Jones. For me, it's just Chris Jones and McDuffie on that's really notable that I like on Kansas City.
What's wild is a dude with the last name Karlaftis wrecked Houston's defense or offensive line last week. Just obliterating. Like he was time after time after time just in their backfield. But so like this is the thing that is going to be interesting for me, is because Kansas City, like when I saw CJ Stroud last week, that offensive line was absolutely cheeks. So Kansas City didn't play their best game because you let a bad offensive line give up infinity billion sacks, and you were still a one possession game for most of the game. So what I saw was when Kansas City decided to bring pressure, there was off linebackers and safeties and nickels going immediately up the A and B gap and not even getting touched. Buffalo's offensive line is better than Houston's. I also trust Josh Allen way more than I do CJ Stroud to change protections. So you shouldn't have those types of interactions. But I also, if you're asking a dude whose number starts in the 20s to tackle Josh Allen, I'm pretty confident that he can break that tackle, though. So I feel like what they might end up doing is invite the pressure sometimes to open up windows, like you were saying with Joe Brady, like get the tight ends involved, but also be able to chip when you need to, because Chris Jones alone can just absolutely wreck an offensive line. But I do think that you might see them strategically, like almost kind of bait Kansas City into bringing pressure, because against the blitz, Josh Allen is so good, and against corners and safeties, he'll be able to shake them off. But if Kansas City can get him on the ground with just bringing 4 and not get penalized,
Nigel, I don't need to put respect on KC's defense. They've been exposed all year. They've been they've been exposed all year. They 15-1, and I could say 13 of the 15 games they won the game by 1 or 2 points. Because
that's just more like an offensive issue, though. But that was their offense just not being the same.
Yeah, their offense is not the same. Even though DeAndre Hopkins is there, he still is not a non-factor to me. He's just not a factor. Travis Kelce is the best player when it comes to skill playing, when it comes to the receivers. He's the number 1 option for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Hollywood Brown is back, and
how does Houston not know that in the postseason too, man? Like, and I told people, like, when that game was going on, it was mostly bad tackling, because you can let Travis Kelce get the targets. He's going to, because it's not even just
the way that he was wide open.
It's within plays. Within plays, him and Mahomes are just on another level as far as like how they just know where to be. Yeah. But you let Travis Kelce, who is damn near my age, break 2 tackles and get a 50-yard gain. Nah, man, you got to wrap him.
Yeah, you can't let him break no tackles, because all he's going to do is gain his confidence. And he's going to want the ball more, and it's going to be hard to cover. He's going to be better and better as long as he's getting the targets that he gets.
Right. And I think that that's going to be, it almost kind of comes full circle with these defenses in the way that not, I don't want to just use a blanket statement of the media because that sounds like a very lazy way of doing this. But what we've been told is that nobody respects the Bills wide receivers and nobody respects the Chiefs wide receivers. And I said this about the whole Baltimore game is if you don't trust them, lock them up man to man. But the problem is Mahomes and Allen can beat you both with their legs, Allen to a different degree and in a different way. And if you want to play a zone all the time, they'll pick you apart and they can have 12 play drives. So it's going to be about confusion, I think, along with the fact of Buffalo's defensive line to me is slightly undersized but they're fairly deep as far as guys with big motors. So, I mean, if you're able to consistently move them in and out and, again, not get penalties on you, and AJ Epinesa is a guy who I'm looking at because when he gets going, he gets ramped up. I love the dude. But, man, you got to be able to temper it back just a bit because you might be the reason why we get an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
That's true, too. So, for me, I'm gonna pick Buffalo in this game. I really pick Buffalo, and it not because I'm on here. I want to pick Buffalo because I hate the Chiefs. So sorry to say,
but I want to pick the Chiefs because if the Bills win, I'm going to be insufferable for 15 straight days, and y'all don't want that.
I'm gonna take the Bills. I think this is time that Josh Allen actually gets to a Super Bowl. This is the fourth time that he played the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's 0-3 against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think he's 4-1. He's either 3-1 or 4-1 in the regular season and 0-3 in the postseason.
And he just cannot beat them in the postseason. I think Sean McDermott is
not his fault. And I think that I need to clear the air on that because people think I'm a huge Josh Allen hater. It's not. But again, I got to clear the air with people who are just saying that he doesn't do anything wrong. But statistically, he's been awesome. But it also gives he digs them into holes, but carries them back out. If he doesn't put Buffalo in a hole early, Buffalo should be able to win. But it's not even just about the multiple turnovers because we see that with Lamar, right? When he has 2 turnovers, he's terrible in the playoffs.
Right.
But they happened earlier, and he was playing well in the second half. When they happen almost matters more than the actual turnovers itself. You know,
right?
So I hope Buffalo wins. But
I think Buffalo wins, but I think it's not going to be easy. I think it's going to be a gritty game. It's going to be a very physical game. It's going to really be up to both offensive lines or who really determines who wins this game. Yes, the running game is going to be a big thing, but now these offensive lines, they're going to have to find ways to protect these quarterbacks. We've seen so many back and forth. We've seen gritty games. And I think Josh Allen and his mindset of what this offense should do while he's out there, I think he's on a different level as far as like trying to lead this team. I think now for defensively, you just got to get Kansas City off the field. You cannot have them have third and 4s. You cannot have them have 3rd and 2s. They need to be 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, 3rd and 12. You need to get them into situations where you can play everything underneath and tackle well. Because if you don't tackle well against the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to make you pay for it.
Yeah, I think what I'm most concerned about, and I mentioned this in the previous week, is now that they've got a complement of all their dudes, right? Hollywood's back, Xavier Worthy, Hopkins has some time in there, Kelsey, like this is the most healthy that we've seen a Kansas City Chief team all year. And I had mentioned last week, I felt like they would have an easier time with Houston. We saw a couple different, trick plays might seem like it's being a little underhanded towards Andy Reid, but it was there were some wrinkles but only minimal. Right. I feel like they've been working on things for this particular game, and they've been waiting for either Baltimore or Buffalo, and you're going to see things that are not in a traditional offense with them. The things that we were seeing Kansas City do when they were blowing people out by 40 a number of years ago. I think you're going to see them do that with Buffalo because big chunk plays are going to be huge. And I feel like they've been working on all these things to prepare for this game because they didn't want to let all these things out the bag. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting back and forth football game, but you're going to see looks from Kansas City where they've been dinking and dunking, and the yak from Kelsey. I don't know if you're going to be able to like duplicate that, but I think you're going to see bigger games from Worthy and most specifically Hollywood Brown because he was a non-factor last week.
Yeah,
I think they're going to want to get him involved,
and that was it.
Yeah, I think they're going to want to get him more involved and use a lot. Both teams use a lot of motion, but I didn't see them really do like the quick pitches like we see sometimes, and like the shovel pass to Kelsey was a staple of them like 3 years ago, right? Tyreek Hill in motion, and then you'd see Mahomes just pitch it real quick when they're inside the 5.
Right.
I would see that play happening 100% in this game if they get inside the 10 or the 5.
So what would be your score of this game? Like where you got it in the 30s, you got it in the 20s. Where you got this game at as far as score prediction?
I do need to know exactly. Well, we're not gonna be able to know right now, but what the weather conditions are supposed to be. I'm assuming it's supposed to be cold, but the degree of that I'm not certain. But I would imagine because I think you're going to see Josh Allen push their hand with him being more involved with the running game. Because this is like it's all or nothing. Like you said, he has cape on his back. He wants to do something different this year than he has in years past. I consider today, like we saw Lamar Jackson be week 1 against Kansas City where he ran the ball 18 times. I think you might see that with Josh Allen. He's going to put it on. I could see this being high 20s, low 30s for both teams.
So, according to AccuWeather, the game time weather is supposed to be like 34 degrees for Kansas City. That's what I'm looking at right now. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. For Sunday's game, it's supposed to be between like 32 and 34 degrees. It's supposed to feel like 20 though.
So man, it's 30 right here, right now, and I went outside and did my stuff like this.
According to ESPN, ESPN Analytics in the matchup predictor, they have the Buffalo Bills winning this game 54.6%.
Oh, that means they losing then. I'm about to Han Solo the hell out of you as with C3PO is saying there's a 263.0% odds to make it through this asteroid field. Never tell me the odds, kid. Don't tell me because I'm gonna go the other way.
Go the opposite way, yeah.
We're about to have 5 L's in Buffalo Bills now. Thanks, man.
My bad. I didn't know. I didn't know. I was just letting me know because I saw the weather and that was up there, so I thought I would just like throw that in there real quickly.
I appreciate the information for sure, but the Bills fan in me now officially feels like it's Kansas City to win now.
So you think Philadelphia and Kansas? If like, do you think that Philadelphia and Kansas City might be the Super Bowl again? That's what you're thinking?
So, I think that Buffalo. I want to say that Buffalo will win. So I think it could be. If we're doing conspiracy theorist, where like the numbers and the Roman numerals are a certain color because they've changed it to red and yellow. Red for Buffalo, yellow for Commanders. Maybe that ends up being the Super Bowl. But if we're just going to go from that perspective, but I think Bills Eagles makes the most sense to me. But I think it's going to be a rematch of a couple of years ago where it's going to be Eagles Chiefs. That's where my heart ultimately ends up at.
Right.
Is that where you where you at?
I mean, I would love to see Buffalo in Philadelphia, but if we get Buffalo and Commanders, that's
that game is going to be bananas, dude.
Oh my god! Like Commanders back in the Super Bowl, like that is insane. But if I want to think just like right off the rip, I want Bills in Philly. That's what I want. But I would not be surprised if we do get that rematch again. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat, man. But
Yeah.
And honestly, it'd be nice to have the Bills get, their revenge. I know as Commanders, it's not fair that Washington, I don't like doing that, but Washington went through the Redskins and the football team and the Commandos to get to here. And we've been waiting to fight Washington in the streets from losing them 31 years ago.
That's a storyline right there. See? That's a
It's
storyline. You never know.
Like Chiefs Commandos has no storyline and Bills Eagles has no storyline. That's why I'm like, or you can manufacture your own if you really want to, but they're not going to be. It's not going to hit the same.
Facts. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man. I'm gonna let you go ahead and hang it up for the day. That was Darion Hopkins of the Talking Sports. I'm sorry, it was Sports Talk with Darion Hopkins. You can find him wherever you get your podcasts, along with YouTube. Bro, I appreciate you being on. This is a lot of fun. I told you, man, usually it's 30 minutes to an hour, but depending on the conversations go, these things can get out of control. And that's what happened today. I'm sorry that I hijacked most of your afternoon.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate you having me on. It was a half day for the kids today, so I was able to do 2 p.m. But I appreciate being on, man. I'd love to come back on and talk more sports with you. It's definitely dope, man. It's been a great time being on.
Good, man. It's been a vibe. It's been a lot of fun. It's always easier to do this with somebody you can actually have conversations with, as opposed to just talking to a microphone and hoping that people are listening. It's I get it. This is a lot of fun, man. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, man. Hopefully the Bills get a win. Hopefully they get a win.
I'm going to be super sad on Sunday. I can already feel it. Y'all know the drill. Stay up, stay blessed. We'll keep you guys on.